Hello everyone, Kanji Hakase here. Today I will talk about 6 things you heard about learning Japanese kanji that are simply not true. Number 1. Learning kanji is difficult because each kanji has numerous readings. So 1/3 of all 2136 jōyō kanji have only a single reading known as onyomi, and another 41.5% have only one onyomi and one kunyomi reading. So 75% of all jōyō kanji have fewer than 3 readings. Yet, many people claim that kanji have numerous readings, often referring to the kanji for life. As an example, this kanji has the highest number of readings as well as an even higher number of non-standard readings, which are not listed in the official jōyō kanji list. There are only 5, you heard that right, 5 other kanji among the 2136 jōyō kanji that have more than 5 standard readings in total. By the way, non-standard kanji readings that are not listed in the official list usually have an extremely low usage frequency, such as these readings, takeru or susamaji. So arguing that non-standard readings should count as well does not really make sense. Number 2. Knowing all 2136 jōyō kanji is necessary to be considered fully proficient in the Japanese language. The highest level of the Japanese language proficiency test, known as JALPTN-1, is said to cover over 2000 kanji, or basically all over 2000 jōyō kanji. One of the most popular kanji textbooks used for self-study contains 2200 kanji. Numerous other textbooks cover 2000 kanji or more. Yet, anyone can easily pass the JLPTN-1 exam with passive knowledge of around 1500 kanji or even fewer. The reason for this is simple. 500 most frequent kanji cover as many as 83% of all kanji in Japanese newspapers. 750 most frequent cover 91%, 1000 cover over 95%, and 1500 cover 98.85% of all kanji in newspapers. While the coverage is slightly lower in novels, online blogs, and other types of texts, it is almost guaranteed that you will not encounter more than 2 or 3 unknown kanji on the JLPTN-1 exam if you know around 1500 kanji. Some people might still argue that they want to learn all those juicy over 2000 jōyō kanji. That's fine. Just bear in mind that low-frequent kanji usually appear in a single commonly used word, so it's much more effective to learn them through vocabulary at a certain point after mastering between 1200 to 1500 most frequent kanji. Number 3. Mnemonic techniques are one of the most effective methods for remembering a large number of kanji in the long run. The popularity of mnemonics in kanji learning has its origins in the popularity of the textbook Remembering the Kanji, written by Heisik. Even though the mnemonics are not provided for all 2200 kanji included in the textbook. Another reason for the popularity of mnemonics is the playfulness linked with this learning method, which often encourages learners to use their creativity during the learning process. However, there are no studies which would confirm that mnemonics are useful for acquiring a large number of kanji and remembering them in the long run. Quite the contrary, there seems to be a consensus in the academic community that mnemonics are not a full-fledged learning method and should be used only as a supplementary method in order to increase the retention rate of kanji with low retention rates. The reason is rather simple. Mnemonics are generally useful for remembering the semantic aspect of kanji, or their meaning, but they are not as useful for remembering the phonetic aspect, or readings. Furthermore, the process of creating mnemonics and remembering them is extremely time consuming, and as soon as you master a kanji on a long-term basis, the mnemonic hint becomes useless. That's why you should never use mnemonics for the most frequent kanji, as you will soon learn them anyway. What's even worse, sometimes you might confuse the mnemonic hint of a simple kanji you already know with a mnemonic for a different kanji, or simply even forget which part of the mnemonic hint is supposed to represent the kanji's meaning in the phenomenon losing the meaning in the mnemonic, named by the linguist Heath Rose. Despite these drawbacks, mnemonics are often included in many kanji textbooks and even in shady textbooks for teaching kana, what I would deem as a tragic reflection of the current market of kanji learning materials. Number 4. Many kanji are pictographs, so it's easy to remember their shape. This is another misconception that stems from marketing strategies aimed at beginner-level learners. There is even a TED Talk in which the presenter basically tries to convince the audience that kanji, or Chinese Hanzi, are mere visual representations of the world around us. While it sounds nice, and it's true that many kanji originated from pictographs, these days pictographs represent less than 15% of all over 2000 jōyō kanji. Although most of these are beginner-level kanji, making generalizations such as many kanji are pictographs about all kanji in general is very misleading. Furthermore, a significant number of pictographs have a shape that can't be derived from the kanji's meaning, so even the statement that it's easy to remember the visual form of pictographs is often not true. Number 5. Kanji with more strokes are harder to remember. This particular opinion might be as widespread as the ones mentioned previously, but if you ask people unfamiliar with kanji and the Japanese language to rate characters based on their difficulty, they would almost always rate kanji with more strokes as more difficult than kanji with fewer strokes. So if we take the kanji nozomi and kiku as an example, most people unfamiliar with Japanese would say that the one on the bottom is more difficult, because it looks visually more complicated. However, for most learners of Japanese, it's actually more difficult to remember and recall the kanji above, due to several reasons, including the high usage frequency of the kanji below, the high component usage frequency of the part gate, as well as the semantic connection between the component ear and the kanji's meaning to hear or to ask. The Japanese researchers Tamaoka and Kiyama conducted a study in 2012 in which they examined how usage frequency affects the recall of kanji consisted of different amount of strokes. They found that frequently used kanji with many strokes are actually easier to remember than kanji with fewer than 8 strokes but low usage frequency. Number 6. The most efficient way to learn kanji is based on their usage frequency, since Japanese children learn kanji in schools based on usage frequency as well. Let me first debunk the second part of the sentence about Japanese kids learning kanji based on usage frequency. This is actually rather easy to disprove, as we can simply check the official jōyō kanji list and check the usage frequency of several kanji that might be suspiciously high in the list. For example, the kanji steam or vapor taught in the second grade does not even belong to the 1500 most frequently used kanji in Japanese. Another example would be the kanji fue for pipe or flute taught in the third year, even though it has the frequency ranking around 1800. Furthermore, there were a few changes in the Kyoiku list in 2020, including the addition of 20 kanji used almost exclusively in the names of prefectures. This alone should clearly indicate that Japanese kids do not learn kanji based on usage frequency. Now let's focus on the first part of the sentence, which claims that learning kanji based on usage frequency is the most efficient method. First and foremost, it is important to clarify why I use the word efficient instead of effective or best. The adjective efficient indicates achieving the best outcome, in this case, acquiring the highest number of the most frequent kanji in the shortest possible time. Obviously, learning kanji based on usage frequency cannot be the most effective method, because effectiveness is related to achieving the best outcome regardless of the time invested. Naturally, grouping together kanji that share the same component and the same reading will improve the effectiveness of remembering kanji more than simply focusing on the single aspect of usage frequency. Nonetheless, the main flaw in the concept of learning kanji based on usage frequency is that every person would need their own kanji list based on their interests, and especially based on the type of Japanese text they tend to read. While it is theoretically possible to create a universal list based on kanji usage frequency data from sources such as Google, Wikipedia, the Aozora Bunko directory, newspapers, online blogs, and so on, it is difficult to balance these various sources, since Google, for example, is a much larger source than online blogs. Another issue is that these various sources might not reflect the use of kanji in everyday life, since there is no kanji frequency database for kanji used in Japanese supermarkets, restaurant menus, street signs, posters, advertisements, and so on. Last but not least, while a newspaper-based kanji database will contain more kanji related to, let's say, politics and the economy, the Wikipedia domain might contain more kanji related to religion, literature, and other specialized contexts. In other words, the sources themselves are biased toward certain contexts. As a result, the concept of learning kanji based on usage frequency might seem clever, but it is pretty much unachievable in practice.